Before we dive into the story you're about to hear, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon. Because here, we uncover the hidden treasures of history, the forgotten stories behind rare coins, and the incredible fortunes that might just be sitting in your drawer right now. Now, let's take a quiet step back to the early 1970s. The world was changing fast. The radio was still king in many homes. Television had that warm glow of family evenings, and the coins in your pocket actually meant something. They carried stories, weight, and a kind of craftsmanship that today's money rarely captures. And in 1971, deep in the heart of South Africa, a small, unassuming coin rolled off the minting presses. Barely half an inch across, made of bright bronze, it was the South African half-cent, a coin that most people never even noticed. To the ordinary man, it was just pocket change, the kind of coin you'd toss in a jar or hand to a child for candy. But to collectors today, it has become something far greater. Let's picture it. One side carried the proud South African coat of arms, the symbol of a young nation still defining its identity. The other side, a delicate image of two sparrows, simple yet full of life. Designed by the artist Coert Steinberg, the same sculptor who created the iconic Springbok design for South African coins. This small half-cent was part of a short-lived chapter in the nation's numismatic story. Now, here's where things get fascinating. In 1971, the South African Mint produced thousands of these half-cents. They weren't rare at first. In fact, they were so common that most people didn't even bother to keep them. But as years went by, the value of the coin dropped to almost nothing, and the half-cent was eventually discontinued altogether. By the 1980s, they were gone from circulation. People threw them away, melted them down, or lost them forever. And that, my friends, is how rare treasures are born, not through deliberate creation, but through quiet disappearance. Over the decades, collectors began to realize that some of these 1971 half-cents had been struck in limited numbers, and even more intriguingly, a few were struck in proof condition, pristine, untouched by circulation, with mirror-like fields and razor-sharp details. Those few coins became the stuff of legends among collectors, whispered about at auctions and private sales. But why would anyone pay attention to a coin that once bought a stick of gum? The answer is simple: history, rarity, and the thrill of owning something that time itself tried to erase. You see, for many collectors, especially those of us who grew up in the age of real money, when a coin had weight, when silver shone in your hand, these tiny artifacts aren't just metal. They're memories. They're moments you can hold between your fingers. The 1971 South Africa half-cent represents the end of an era, the last breath of a simpler economic time before inflation, before paper and plastic took over. Now imagine this. Somewhere, sitting quietly in a box, maybe passed down from a father or grandfather, there's one of these coins. And not just any one. A perfect specimen, brilliantly uncirculated. A coin that somehow survived 5 decades without a single scratch or mark. Maybe it was set aside by a mint worker. Maybe it was part of a collector's estate, forgotten for years. And when that coin finally surfaced, it changed everything. Because one of those 1971 South African half-cent coins, in perfect condition, verified and authenticated, shocked the collecting world. It was auctioned not for hundreds, not for thousands, but for a staggering $14 million. Now let that number sink in. $14 million. For a coin that once wasn't even worth a full cent. How does something like that happen? It's not just rarity. It's story. It's legacy. It's the kind of magic that happens when history, art, and nostalgia collide. For many collectors, that coin became a symbol of the lost craftsmanship of the minting world. A reminder that even the smallest things can carry enormous value, not just in money, but in meaning that if you were around in the early 70s, you'll remember the feel of coins like this in your pocket. Maybe you had one and never even thought twice. Maybe you traded one at a corner store. Imagine now that very coin being worth more than a mansion, more than a lifetime of work. It's enough to make any man glance twice at the old coin jar on his shelf. But here's the truth behind every great coin story. Most of these valuable pieces aren't just luck. They're the result of sharp eyes, patient collectors, and people who respect history. Those who kept their coins clean, dry, and stored properly now hold pieces of metal that the world suddenly wants back. And if you've been collecting coins for years, or even if you're just starting to look through what your father or grandfather left behind, this story should tell you something powerful. Never underestimate the humble coin. Especially those small ones, the forgotten ones, the ones nobody cared about. Because sometimes, that's exactly where the treasure hides. So, take a look at your collection. Pull out that old album. Check the dates, the mint marks, the details. You never know what you might find. It might be a South African coin, a British penny, an old US wheat cent, each one with its own story waiting to be rediscovered. And when you hold that 1971 half cent in your hand, remember this: it represents more than money. It's a connection to time, to craftsmanship, to the men and women who shaped and struck it half a century ago. Every scratch, every gleam of bronze, every tiny line on that coin carries a whisper of the past. And for one lucky collector, that whisper turned into a fortune. $14 million worth of history, art, and legacy. That if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales about coins that changed lives, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. Because there are still hidden treasures out there, waiting to be found, maybe even in your own pocket. Pause. This was the story of the 1971 South Africa half center, a coin that went from half a cent to $14 million.